Brooklyn Independent Television.
Coming up on Brooklyn Review.
Down the state of Israel!
Campus controversy goes global at Brooklyn College. An equitable road to recovery.
Conversations in the workshops that the summit is allowing to take place are going to be critical ingredients for reshaping the way in which New York sort of practices its own sort of civic engagement.
And 50 years since the dream. We'll have these stories and more next. Welcome to Brooklyn Review. I'm Brian Vines. A recent event at Brooklyn's namesake college spawned waves of international headlines. First about its topic, then about the response. Sometimes it's easy to forget Brooklyn is a college town. St. Francis in the north, Kingsborough to the south, and Medgar in the middle. And the borough's namesake institution, Brooklyn College in Midwood. It's there where a recent lecture, organized by the Students for Justice in Palestine, sparked a campus debate that had all the elements to ignite an international media firestorm.
Well, the Israel-Palestine conflict is one of many issues often sparking controversy on college campuses. But in what could be a first, a showdown over a public event featuring a Palestinian author and a Jewish-American professor is leading to threats of one school losing its funding. It's happening right here in New York City. On Thursday night, Brooklyn College is set to host a forum with two members of the BDS movement, a nonviolent campaign to boycott, divest from, and sanction the Israeli government until it complies with international law.
MSNBC, Al Jazeera, Democracy Now!, and nearly any paper you could read all put in time on Campus Road, eager for a soundbite on the polarizing topic from an impassioned student or an outraged elected official who all converged at a public institution of higher learning. But the story behind the passionate reactions is one that has played out on both public and private campuses since education became institutionalized. Should the separation of church and state extend to the state and schoolhouse? Now, Miss Manners may admonish us to never discuss religion or politics at the dinner table, but just what should or should not be brought to light on a publicly funded college campus?
You should know that right now there is an organized campaign from a who's who list of prominent and powerful New York politicians, including members of Congress, state legislators, and mayoral candidates, to do everything in their power to stop the horrifying possibility of a college holding a panel discussion of a controversial issue. No, really. You should know a group of Brooklyn College students organized an event to discuss the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, which is an attempt by activists here and around the world to pressure Israel to end its settlements and occupation through organized boycotts, international sanctions.
Elected officials co-signed a letter to Brooklyn College president, Dr. Karen Gould, and held a press conference at the college's main gate.
What's very offensive to me is when the administration turns around and says, well, we're not endorsing these views, we're simply sponsoring the event. I mean, it's a little bit shocking, honestly, to hear a president say that, because a president of a university should be familiar with the basic meaning of words. The word sponsorship, according to the dictionary, means one who vouches or is responsible for another thing. So it really is intellectually dishonest for the administration to turn around and say, oh, we're only sponsoring the event. What that means is we're only vouching for this event.
Universities are places that really need to have the freedom and have had the freedom for centuries to engage in dialogue and debate and discussion as they see fit. That doesn't necessarily mean that every single event is going to show every single perspective about a given issue, but that there are points of view that are presented and debated and discussed so that people can really wrestle with the most meaningful issues of our time.
But in hosting the forum, the college may have unwittingly created an issue for our times.
We have hundreds of events on our campus every year, and those are programmed by student groups, by academic departments, by others on our campus. And the majority of them aren't controversial to the level that this event is, but there certainly are events with tough topics and controversy. And to suggest that now the funding of an institution is going to be dependent on what an elected official or anyone else may think about any given one of those hundreds of events that are happening seems outside of what is practical.
Funding a public college is a practical undertaking, and in the CUNY system, the purse strings are controlled by the City Council. A flurry of letters from elected officials, including a January 31st correspondence from New York City Council Assistant Majority Leader Lou Fidler and 9 other council members that asserted, "We do not believe this program is what the taxpayers of our city, many of whom would feel targeted and demonized by this program, want their tax money to be spent on. We believe in the principle of academic freedom. However, we also believe in the principles of not supporting schools whose programs we and our constituents find to be odious and wrong."
We're getting into dangerous territory if we are, as a country, going to look at a system in which public officials can, pick and choose what topics are being discussed and debated and explored on a campus, regardless of whether it's private or public.
Though she is not granted any interviews, President Gould did release a statement to the Brooklyn College community, which in part read, "Brooklyn College does not endorse the views of the speakers visiting our campus next week, just as it has not endorsed those of previous visitors to our campus with opposing views. We do, however, uphold the right to speak and the rights of our students and faculty to attend, listen, and fully debate."
The English language changes every single day, especially with the president of Brooklyn College, where she has said that, yeah, we're co-sponsoring, but that does not mean we support this event. When you co-sponsor an event, does that mean you support the event or you don't support the event? I think it's very clear what that means. Brooklyn College got into the mud very deeply. I think they realized that mistakes were made. Freedom of speech, yes, but the seal of approval from the institution itself is unacceptable.
On the eve of the event, Brooklyn elected officials from the city, state, and federal level once again wrote to President Gould to clarify their position, stating, "We stand strongly for academic freedom for students and academics. We affirm the right of the students to sponsor the event. We did not request its cancellation. We did not and would not threaten the funding of Brooklyn College. We will continue to oppose efforts that would seek to undermine the free and open debate of critical issues." Also on the day before the event, at the highest level of the pre-panel controversy, Mayor Bloomberg weighed in, adding, "If you want a university where the government decides what kind of subjects are fit for discussion, I suggest you apply to school in North Korea. I can't think of anything that would be more destructive to a university and its students. Students like Sarah Alley."
We got sponsorship from people who, the political science department being one of them, and I feel that their sponsorship is just promoting a good education, because a good education allows the students to receive points of views that are well-rounded and from different sources.
So when the signs have been trashed and the letters and allegations stop flying, just what will be the legacy of this episode?
They should not be getting involved in pro-Israel events, anti-Israel events. That's not their role. What about the chilling effect in the classroom? What about students who are in a classroom knowing the professors voted to support this event? That's a real free speech issue when you create a chilling effect. That's what this has contributed to. That's not healthy for anyone.
It does empower me to continue with our club and with putting out our statement, that our point of view, and it is empowering to have that backup of people who are willing to vouch for our freedom to present that point of view.
While I don't suggest that the topics of this event are going to be any less challenging a year from now than they are now, I think that we as an institution will be stronger for it, and for standing up to the fact that we do provide the freedom of all of our community members to discuss and debate the topics that are important to them.
So this is a teachable moment.
Yes, absolutely. This is a teachable moment.
It's hard to believe that Superstorm Sandy was months ago. But now that the water is gone, some lingering questions do remain. A 3-day citywide gathering of workshops, panels, concerts, and performances with an aim to unite for equitable and sustainable rebuilding was convened to help answer some of those questions at the People's Recovery Summit.
The People's Recovery Summit is a gathering of different grassroots organizations, structuralized organizations, community members, and the public who just want to come in. We have workshops basing themselves on the ecological and environmental end, educational end, the organizational end, and the direct action end. We're using these workshops to kind of facilitate writing up different ideas that we can use to sustain this movement for the relief of Hurricane Sandy and to move it into another storm relief effort if need be. The biggest thing that's coming out of it is the spreading of the idea of mutual aid and community responsibility. We're sharing with each other our ideas for the future.
We run a day labor hiring site in Bensonhurst, which is one of the oldest hiring sites in New York City. Because of Sandy, we actually lost our physical infrastructure. Over months, we actually went through a challenge of actually fundraising. One of the good things that happened is that when this type of tragedies happened, is the time we realized that it's not only us, but we have a community in the neighborhood that we have able to come together from really relying that these are the times that we need more than ever to see each other and look out for each other.
So if you want to learn the mold cocktail, 3:30 today, 1 o'clock tomorrow, somewhere around this general building vicinity. Earlier, I took part in facilitating the ecological and environmental work group, and a lot of concerns for the direct communities were addressed, including the toxic chemical and mold remediation issues, which it's really hard to get around those in the affected areas because there's so much going on and so much misinformation. We can finally get together as a group with representatives from communities and different grassroots organizations working in these areas and talk about different solutions and different paths we can take to redirect energy in our environment to be more, sufficient for the people and sustainable for the future.
We should never allow this after Katrina. And we knew that this danger existed on Staten Island for all the years of my life, and more so in the last few decades.
I think this is an extraordinary moment. I think that this summit and the conversations and the workshops that this summit is allowing to take place are going to be critical ingredients for reshaping the way in which New York sort of practices its own sort of civic engagement, the degree to which we're able to rebuild a city that's going to work for people and it's going to work for the communities, not just those that were affected directly by Hurricane Sandy, but all communities throughout New York City. And I think it's an invaluable platform for really considering some of the philosophical, the existential, as well as the practical questions that are going to feed into the solutions and really are ultimately going to give shape to what New York looks like, not just in 6 months or a year, but 10, 20, 50 years out.
So basically how playback works is that we have no script whatsoever, ever. These actors, no idea what they're going to do. The stories we're going to perform come from you and what you're thinking and feeling.
We're an improvisational theater company based in New York City, and we focus on telling people stories through theater. We're artists, there's people who are organizers, there's people who have expertise around getting rid of mold, that's not what we do. We don't have that knowledge. But what art does is allow you to experience your emotional state, experience the story of what you're doing, and laugh when you need to laugh, or to feel maybe the moments that are of sadness or loss as well. So I think art is an important part of organizing.
Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hola.
Hello.
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 Hey. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
We're all starting to realize as a whole that it's not our personal futures that we need to worry about. It's our kids' futures. It's our grandchildren's futures. Because there's a lot more at stake than just what's going on now here. So we're just using this as a platform to hash out ideas for the next generations.
It's up to you.
It's not you. It's up to you. You.
Its waters provided various industries in Brooklyn with access to commercial goods. But over time, the Gowanus Canal became full of dangerous pollutants. Now, over a century later, a new plan is in the works to rid the canal of its murkiness and create jobs in the process. Melissa Rose Cooper has the story.
That is the question that I'm getting to wonder about.
Brooklynites came out in numbers to attend a public meeting and hear the Environmental Protection Agency's latest proposal to clean up the Gowanus Canal.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming out tonight. It's really good to see all of you, many familiar faces, people who really care about the future of the Gowanus Canal.
Created in the 1800s, the canal was once a major cargo transportation route throughout Brooklyn. But due to cost concerns, its original construction lacked a proper water flushing mechanism. This resulted in raw sewage overflows and the formation of toxic chemicals, making it one of the most contaminated hazardous waste sites in the country.
Why is it taking so long to clean up the canal?
Well, this is a heavily contaminated urban waterway, and I think part of the problem is people just thought it was hopeless, that this was so heavily contaminated that there'd never be enough interest or money to clean it up. And a few years ago, when EPA took action and put it on the federal Superfund Site, it became clear that there is the ability to clean up this urban waterway. I think it should have happened sooner, and I think the dynamic changed once the public got more involved and engaged.
Cleaning up of the Gowanus Canal has been a deep and abiding priority of many, many people in this community for a long, long time. And I think for much of that time, most people saw it as just a dream. But thanks to a lot of work, first by many, many activists in this community for a long time, and now by a great team, that day is demonstrably and visibly closer. And we're very excited about it and grateful for it.
The EPA's $500 million proposal to purify the canal consists of dredging contaminated sediments over the course of several years and replacing it with layers of clean material. The top layer would be made of a certain kind of clay that would create a barrier against future contaminants. The EPA says the project will create numerous job opportunities that will include several entry-level positions. Residents had the opportunity to voice their concerns regarding the plan.
First of all, I'd like to thank the EPA. I mean, this is really an example of why we need government and government working well with the community. I have a question about what happened in light of what happened with Hurricane Sandy. I had one of the buildings on Bond Street that flooded, and I'm happy to hear it was just bacteria and not the other contaminants. But during the remediation of the canal, if we have another event like that, what are the chances, what sort of steps are you going to take to make sure that if we have a flood, it's not going to be water with the PHHs?
Our risk assessment did assume the worst case situation that material from the bottom of the canal might end up being transported through floodwaters. It does not appear to have happened to any significant extent at all after Hurricane Sandy, but we have assumed that that is possible. And one of the purposes of the remediation is to avoid that happening in the future. But during the project, we'll take every step that we can to secure the site before a major storm arrives.
The design will take 3 years, and that is because the site is so complex. And then we expect to finish by 2022. which is again not a long time for a site of that size and that complexity.
Once the canal is clean, what's your ultimate goal?
The goal is to keep it clean and have this as a wonderful urban aquatic gem for Brooklyn and everyone who visits Brooklyn. We're not going to get it clean to the point where people can fish and swim in it anytime soon, but it shouldn't smell, it shouldn't be a health threat, it shouldn't be an eyesore, it should be a community resource, and that's what we're all working for.
Brooklynites have until March 28th to submit any additional proposals to the EPA. For Brooklyn Review, I'm Melissa Rose Cooper.
I direct you to this really good short report, right? Short is good.
2013 marks the 50th anniversary of the historic March on Washington, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. In this Black History Month at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, a couple of local artists reflect on African American history and Dr. King's vision through a multimedia exhibit, March On, Freedom Ride.
When Martin Luther King came with that vision of a dream, he was a believer of seeing the future through his dream and making it happen. But in any kind of religion and belief, tradition belief, you can see the dreams taking a big part of your transformation.
You think about the history of America and the history of civil rights and the march. I mean, a lot of the dreams were the dreams that were proposed in the past have some come to, reality for some people not. I mean, it's a constant struggle.
As a curator, I'm always interested in exploring an area that I consider contemporary urban history. So about a year ago, as I normally do, I was sitting around sort of thinking about what would be a great idea for an exhibition, and it occurred to me that we were right on the heels of a major milestone in American history, the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's March on Washington. I was born in 1973, so I was, not even around when this took place. And I remember hearing some stories from my older relatives about Martin Luther King and what he represented. And those stories were always more important to me than the stories that I read in my textbooks. So I wanted to do an exhibition that would, in a way, help me parse out and sort of work through some of my memories from childhood about Martin Luther King.
Well, it came about a year ago when I was in Seattle for my first solo show, and I was walking in the street and I found this amazing Life magazine that a vintage store will sell for expensive money, and I was grabbed by those covers because they really, they really grab you in a sense that they're very universal. And every topic can be used in this century. 30 years difference or 40 years difference, doesn't matter. Life magazine has this kind of a beautiful power to use picture in a good way to awareness people about what's happening in the world.
When I was invited by the curator Dexter to participate in the show, it was what he was interested in is a piece that I made that was part of a larger body of work, which was called the Hillman U clothing line, which was a sculptural project. And part of the sculptural project of the Hillman U, which is attached to the dashiki piece, which is kind of a costume, kind of ceremonial shirt that's West African, but I was more interested in it as an African American because it was something that was very popular in the 70s. And I really felt like it was something that was a uniform for African Americans who were becoming very much tapped into their heritage, and as a sign or a visual like banner or protest, they wore these dashikis as a way of talking about their heritage and their relationship to their heritage.
In the past, it was more about just art that I liked, and now more recently it's about art that tells a story that's important to me and hopefully important to other people.
Like Egypt is a good topic for bringing this kind of topic in a Martin Luther King month and in this Afro-American history. They still need to go back to the past to understand why the struggle of Afro-American now needs to be more understanding from the outside of America, not just the inside of America.
That history, that information is a driving force for content for my work, because growing up in the 70s, I kind of grew up while things were happening. So I was aware of a lot of things happening around me, but I wasn't protesting. I was a kid. So for me, this is my experience of kind of reflecting on those things.
Barack Obama's election, the first term, not even the second term, but the first term, really made me reevaluate a lot of the things that I had sort of presupposed about American history. And now, with these multiple milestones sort of piling up on one another, the anniversary of the March on Washington, Barack Obama's election to his second term, and the myriad other things that are happening in the world, this show just seemed like it was important and the time was now.
Well, that brings this Brooklyn Review to a close. We hope you enjoyed it, and happy Black History Month to you. If you want to watch it again or check out any of our previous episodes, visit us at our home on the web at bricartsmedia.org. We're on Facebook, iTunes, YouTube. You can even send me a tweet. We'll see you next time. Bye now.
Watch this and other Brooklyn Independent Television episodes online at bricartsmedia.org/BIT.